Good morning. I'm trying to do too many things with two hands. Can you see our candle that we've lit to begin our service? Welcome to Community Church of Boston. We call ourselves a peace and justice congregation since 1920. And we light this candle that I got from my late friend, Jim Thomas. We cleared out his apartment. He passed away, and we were in California clearing out his apartment. And this last couple of weeks has been too much about lost friends. In California, it was a memorial for Jim. In Syracuse, New York, this past week, it was a memorial for my uncle, David Stam. And yesterday, it was a memorial for our beloved member of the church, John Mannheim. There was a service in Concord, Massachusetts. So we light this candle to all three of those friends of mine and friends of the church in remembrance of those beautiful souls who are departed to the next plane. Cultivo una rosa blanca en junio como en enero. Cultivo una rosa blanca en junio como en enero. Para mi amigo sincero que me da la mano franca. Y para el cruel que me arranca el corazón con que vivo. Y para el cruel que me arranca el corazón con que vivo. Cardosne ortigas cultivo una rosa blanca. Guantanamera, etc. Those are my favorite two verses of Guantanamera that I sing for those departed friends. And also for this morning, which I'm so looking forward to. This morning is about Cuba, and it's about beauty and heavenly music. We usually start with a song, but we're going to hold off on that because the entire topic of this morning is music, the music of Los Hermanos, Ilmar and Aldo López Gavilán. And we will talk more about that a little bit later. But first, some announcements. I am way behind on my work because I've been away at these memorials, and there's a bunch of thank you notes to write for people who have contributed generously to Community Church. And there's also a whole bunch of letters that need to go out to our decision makers. Those are copies of the long petition that we wrote on behalf of the Holy Land Foundation 5, who won our 2022 Sacco and Vanzetti Award. We have a bunch that'll go out to everything from the White House all the way down to our local representatives, and we need to send those out. If you want to help do that, come to our Wednesday open house. Casa Abierta, open house, happens every Wednesday at noon. We serve pupusas. Because of our El Salvador connection, our cook and janitor is from El Salvador, and we have always pupusas to serve and do a little work and also get a tour of the building and the work that we're doing on the building to make it a green model building, and also the archives that we hold of 102 years of the history of this amazing church. We're located in Copley Square. And we have a new newsletter, which looks like this. And I'll tell you about things that are coming up. Today's program, behind the scenes of the award-winning film Los Hermanos. Next Sunday is about Robin Williams, Being Robin, Spirit or Delusion, with Roger Kabler, who is a filmmaker who's done a film about the comedian Robin Williams. Music by our good friend David Dodson, whose brain is just as wacko as that of Robin Williams. The next week after that, a fabulous thing. We have music, comedy, and political comedy. Randy Credico on May 14th. I was just on the phone with Randy and found out all these things that we have in common. I'm really looking forward. And both Roger and Randy Credico, Roger Kabler, 7th of May, and Randy Credico, 14th of May, will be here live in person. So I hope we have a sizable audience to receive both of those folks. May 21st. Now, this is an interesting title for a church service. This is Reverend Barry Lynn, who is the longtime director of Americans United for Separation of Church and State, retired now, but Reverend Barry Lynn now lives in Massachusetts, and he will join us. And his title of his talk is A Life in Three Acts: Peace, Porn, and Prayer. Reverend Barry Lynn, music by Cozy Sheridan that day. And it goes on from there. There's more programs to tell you about and more concerts. And of course, our once a month Peña, which will happen starting in May on the second Saturday of every month. So that's May 13th, if I'm not mistaken, the second Saturday of every month. And that's brought to us by Encuentro Cinco. They had one last night, and Jose Aleman tells me that there were 10 countries represented here. So it's a marvelous new thing we're doing. There's food, there's music and poetry and dance and political diatribes. If you have one of those, you can come down. Here's your soapbox at Community Church of Boston. So all kinds of things going on. So before we start with our program, I want to just tell you a little bit about yesterday's John Mannheim funeral, let's call it, or memorial service. He passed away in January, but this was his memorial. And it had a triangular folded American flag because he was a veteran of the Korean War. And he was also a very active member of Veterans for Peace here in Boston's Smedley Butler Brigade chapter. And he was also such a faithful member of this church. He served in many capacities. He was the treasurer, he was the clerk, he was vice president, and he was president. Many years, John Mannheim did just such key volunteer work for us. After he retired, he brought me his archives from his work at Community Church, and it was just so well organized, unlike most of our archives. And it just showed how hard he had worked on fundraising and what they called canvassing members of the church back in the 80s, in the late 70s, in the 90s, to be able to raise the funds that we needed to keep this church running and keep it alive and vibrant. John Mannheim, and here's the interesting thing: was this was a very Catholic funeral in a beautiful Catholic church in Concord, and it was, it had everything. It had the incense, it had the communion, it had the songs and the priest chanting and the pews and the hymns. And my question was whether John Mannheim was a closet Catholic or whether this was about his wife. And I haven't figured that out for sure, because while he was here, he was just a very radical organizer and union. He worked for Mass Teachers Association, and he was a negotiator for Mass Teachers Association on the side. He was just a vibrant member of Community Church of Boston. So it's either his wife who did this Catholic funeral, or else it was him, and he was a closet Catholic underneath his membership in Community Church. And I think that we might be the only church that lets you be lets you engage in religious infidelity. And we have this history of that. You ask our senior member, Tilly Teixeira. She was drawn to a community church in the 50s because she was Jewish and she wanted to marry a Black Catholic guy from Cape Verde. And she came here, and back in that time, this was a scandalous, horrible thing. Either racial or religious mixed marriages, or misogyny is what is what's it called? Miscegenation is what they called it back then. Well, community church is where a lot of people like that found refuge, and it still is. So it was a wonderful thing to be in a ceremony like that, because it was so different from what we are and what we do here. But just a reminder that all creeds are sacred and all religions are sacred, and some of them have an inflated sense of their self-importance. We do not. We praise irreverence, like we're going to see in the next 2 Sundays. Robin Williams, Randy Credico, irreverence, political satire, all kinds of stuff. Anyway, enough of me. I was going to talk about some of the books that we have inherited from a couple of people, most recently Jim Thomas. Just want to tell you that we have a wealth of books at this church, and I really hope you will come by at our open house, or anytime really that we have office hours, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And we'd love to give you a tour of this enormous mountain of books that we've inherited, and we're trying to go through, decide which ones we're going to get rid of, donate someplace, and which ones will be part of our permanent library. Among the ones that I'm sure, if I have anything to do with it, will be part of the library are photography books. I want to show you just a couple of really interesting photography books that I brought back from my friend Jim Thomas in California. This is called Revolution in Black and White, Photographs of the Civil Rights Era. Gorgeous photographs of an insider in the civil rights movement, Ernest Withers. The thing that was found out later was that he was also an FBI agent. So does that mean we shouldn't have this book at community church? And it brings up a topic about cancel culture, I think. I am enjoying having this book in this library because it's absolutely beautiful books, or photographs of the civil rights era, the 60s, the freedom rides, the march lunch counter sit downs. Come and see this book. It's here. And other older coffee table sized books. This is Georgia O'Keeffe, A Portrait by Alfred Stieglitz. Huge, heavy books. Edward Weston. Hold it up high, says Amar, so you can see it. Edward Weston. A Day in the Life of Italy. These are beautiful photographs. Even heavier, Alfred Stieglitz. And this is the heaviest one. And it's maybe my favorite. This is called Earth from Above, and it's all beautiful aerial photographs from before the time of drones. And the author the photographer is Jan Arthust Bertrand. And I think we should have, as part of our broadcast, digital copies of these beautiful images of all over the planet, of Earth from above, of different human scenes and nature scenes. Dean, you've gone long enough, and it's time to start the program by introducing the marvelous world-class violinist Ilmar López Gavilán. We screened a film early this year that's called Los Hermanos, and I saw it late night on PBS, and it was so enchanting and such beautiful music. that I looked into screening it ourselves here at the church, and we succeeded in connecting with the filmmakers and had a screening in January. And now we get to see some excerpts of the film as well as excerpts of these two fabulous musicians, Aldo and Ilmar López Gavilán. Aldo lives in Havana, Cuba, and Ilmar lives in the New York area. And the challenge of them playing together is such a difficult one because of the political circumstance. What I wanted to say after I finished singing those two verses from Guantanamera was, tell your decision makers to take Cuba off the terrorism list. Cuba is not our enemy. How can we get that through? Whatever your political persuasion, Cuba is not our enemy. Cuba does not present a hazard to us, and somehow we will get past this 60, 70 years of insanity and come to a place where Ilmar and Aldo can tour to their heart's content, be it at the Kennedy Center or be it with some orchestra in Idaho or wherever they want, have a tour. And I hope they come to Boston and we can receive them here in the manner that we can with a pupusa banquet and a red carpet. So that's why I want to just hand it over to Ilmar to take it away and talk to us about their music and about this film. Thank you so much, Ilmar, for joining us this morning. It's just a total honor and pleasure to have you.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. It's wonderful. When I heard you singing the Guantanamera verse, I was actually very surprised. You have a really good voice too, by the way, Dean. Are you looking to another profession, perhaps?
Let's see. Yes, I do a little bit of that as well.
Good,
mostly just for fun, but here at church quite a bit. Every chance I get.
I love it. I think it's a very good thing you do that. I always quote some of the early spiritual people, the one that did Gregorian chanting. To them, it was more important to teach the congregation how to sing than how to read. Isn't that crazy? I mean, not to me. To me, it makes sense because, of course, I'm a musician. I understand how music helps you elevate your soul in a way that is very peculiar. It's very particular. Sometimes. Yeah, I just feel when I play that it's like a prayer or like a way to transcend the routine state of mind into a much more elevated one. So yeah, when I saw that, I'm not just thinking that by myself, but some scholars would say that back in the days, and actually. Make sure that the people knew how to sing as a way of, giving wings to the soul, so to speak. I was really surprised. I'm like, wow, I guess that's a thing. So yeah, when you sang, even though it's Guantanamera, I still feel like, wow, yeah, that's it. Good.
Where do we start with excerpts of music, Ilmar, and maybe a little talk about your life and your trajectory and how you got to the United States, and also about your recent receiving your brother and family on a trip that they came from New York. All those things we'd love to hear about, and excerpts of the music as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first excerpt that I chose is a song called Eclipse, and I love this because even though it has the title suggests something to do with the cosmos, is actually more of an eclipse of the soul, and it directly talks about our involuntary separation. I left Cuba when I was 14. I left to study in Moscow and boarding school. So it was considered to be a huge honor. But for me, it was also a pretty traumatic event to separate myself from my country, my parents, and also from my little brother. He was 7 years old. And we were so tight. We play all the time. And so this song tries to capture what otherwise would have been a private letter. So it would have been something that you write in a diary, something not to be shared, something very intimate. But so you would have never find out about this if it was converted to words. But since it's in a musical form, you get to peek into our most intimate space. And I absolutely love this one. You're welcome to play it. Wow.
Magnificent.
Thank you. I thought I heard. Oops. Everything okay?
Yes, when I unmuted, that happened. That was magnificent.
Thank you.
Shall we go ahead with the next excerpt, and you can introduce it, and we can have a conversation sort of at the end?
Sure, absolutely.
So we go on to the next one?
Yes, please. It's a clip from the video, from the movie.
Practice.
Yes. The first time Ilmar took me to Cuba at nighttime on purpose. I'm from Korea, a very developed country, and I had no idea, like Cuba, how it looks like. Everything was so dark, so I didn't see anything. And the next day when I woke up, of course his house is beautiful, looking at the sea, but besides sea, everything was so destroyed. Like, oh my goodness, where I am. Later on, I start looking at all the buildings, they have character. Each building has a different character, so it's beautiful. I start falling in love with Cuba.
Nos levantamos muy temprano con el excitement. Fui al agro a comprar flores, a comprar comida para hacer esta noche de bienvenida. Es especial porque hace tiempo que no vienen todos juntos. Qué raro que no está anunciado en la pizarra.
No.
El vuelo de Nueva York, de Delta.
Por ahí vinieron.
¿Ya llegó?
Sí, ya.
Sí. No, porque no está anunciado en la pizarra.
No, estaba automático, pero no se preocupe que están ahí.
¿Están ahí?
Sí.
Me acaba de llamar Diana que Ilmar y la gente, todos están allá en la casa, que se fueron. Nunca nos dijeron nada. Vamos para la casa. Qué frustración.
¡Bienvenida!
Ian.
Tan grandísimo. No sé, amiguito, pero ven acá, cuéntame una cosa.
No entiendo nada, si todo el mundo tiene tremendo berro, llevamos ahí 2 horas buscando así como antes, como
No, pero era otra puerta entonces.
y preguntamos 1000 veces.
Sí.
¿Por dónde sale? Por aquí, todo el mundo, por aquí, por aquí.
Ah, pues nosotros tampoco es que nos escondimos y nos fuimos echando, buscamos ahí no hay
No
nadie.
pudiste llamar o pudiste.
tenemos.
Claro que sí, le pides a cualquiera el teléfono, ¿no? Para la próxima. Déjame.
Ok, dale. Lo único que puedo pensar es que yo salí por donde no hay nada que declarar. Was that funny? That was really funny. So, yeah. So I love. Can you hear me? Yeah. I love this clip in particular because just like life, movies are unpredictable, and they were expecting a beautiful warm scene of an embrace. We finally meet again after a while, our families are together, and instead there is a fiasco and Aldo gets mad, and it's so funny. Also, I really love the usage of music in the scene. I thought that selection was brilliant. I don't know if you notice how that part of the music, the soundtrack, it stops and goes, and it goes so well with our gestures. I thought it was a brilliant pairing of image and music. So I love it. So I want to play the new excerpt. Is exactly the piece that you just heard being played, and the name of the track is called Viernes de Ciudad. Translated is City Friday. It's meant to represent actually the city of London. It's where Aldo went to school at, and I also start going there years later. Simply by coincidence, with the Harlem Quartet, we have a residency at the Royal College of Music in London as a quartet. So now this city unites both of us. But the piece was composed before that. Is based on Aldo's impression of London coming straight from Havana. He never seen a cosmopolitan city, a huge and very diverse, developed city. So it's meant to depict from the start of the day until the evening, different neighborhoods and different atmospheres of London. So it starts in the Middle Eastern side of town. Very early in the morning, you will hear this very quiet music, like a sunrise, almost meditative. And it keeps going to then you will hear definitely when it crosses the Irish part, it sounds like fiddling here. It sounds like American violin style fiddling, a bit of Irish, and then it continues. You will hear different sides, some Spanish at some point, but my favorite is that it ends in a pub, in a British pub, where all the cultures and all the difference gets put aside, and people are having a good time drinking a beer, and it's a tribute to the Beatles. The end kind of sounds like the Beatles, wrapping all of this together. So it's a wonderful composition, and just enjoy it. Viernes de Ciudad. best. Well, I hope you enjoy that. Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, I thought your opening remarks have something to do with this particular song. So it's very connected. The next track I chose is called Epilogo, epilogue in English. And I like this one a lot for a number of reasons. Also, one of the primary reasons is because it fits so well with the part of the movie that you're about to watch, and is used there very well, I thought. And also because musically speaking, I feel it's a really good combination of the classical influence with Aldo's work in Cuba. It has a lot of elements that I hear in Schumann's music, and also it has a lot of elements of Nueva Trova. You're probably familiar with the sound of the famous Cuban trovadors like Silvio Rodriguez, Pablo Milanés. It has that element that reminds me a lot of my adolescence there. And also, it's a really cool piece because that's the piece that Joshua Bell chose to perform when he performed with Aldo in the Lincoln Center. So arguably it's the most well-known of all of them because a mega star like violinist Joshua Bell performed it. And it's a wonderful performance. Aldo's wife, Diana Garcia, is the conductor of a very well-known chamber orchestra in Cuba. And they came here with Aldo and performed. And one of the selections is the one that you're about to hear. So enjoy it, Epilogo. Oh.
Yes?
I thought maybe we play the video clip first, so I misannounced this.
Okay, we'll play the video.
Okay, thank you.
Joshua.
Hey! This is your first time in New York? Yeah. Everybody?
We were wondering if you'd like to do it just as a duo at the beginning.
So what are you asking? What is the choice? What is the choice?
In the middle part, I would like to try that you do the melody by yourself.
Oh, really?
And then the second, you like...
There are some very tricky rhythms. You know, it's always just off the beat. I love playing my Tchaikovsky and my Mozart, and that's 90% of what I do. But you play some, Cuban music, and you find this kind of rhythm, and then it does affect how you play everything else. There's always room for figuring out new ways to enhance the piece and figuring out my role. He's done it countless times. Maybe even finding a way to make it fresh for him.
Thank you so much. Such a great song. I love this song. Makes me happy.
Tocar epílogo con Joshua Bell lo hace aún más grande, ¿no? Más especial.
Thank you, Joshua.
Okay, thank you.
Casi siempre he tocado esta obra con personas muy cercanas a mí familiarmente.
Was that the end of the excerpt?
Thank you so much. Yeah, very uplifting piece, very, very optimistic. And for the last clip, I chose something super, super Cuban. It's called Pan con Timba. And you will see the clip first and then the music. But I just want to talk a little bit about this one because Pan con Timba is an expression when you're having pan, which is bread, with something that you don't know what's going to be. It's like mystery meat or mystery. And it's just a joke, you know. It's definitely so. Before revolution, like long ago, pan con timba was actually something that meant to have pan, guava, and cheese. That's the name of the sandwich. But then the word timba morphed into, who knows, like mystery. You never know. Like you're at school and this is the recess comes and or lunch comes and you see a bread with something inside and you don't actually know what it is. That's pan con timba. And and timba also is in the name of a new genre of music, a very, very, very fast salsa. Is so elaborate that here very often the radio people mistake timba for Latin jazz. Imagine it has a lot of like syncopations, a lot of virtuosity that here they won't imagine people dance to that. It's so advanced. But in Cuba, believe it or not, they do dance to that. They keep the steps, they keep the feet following the rhythm. So timba became out of that joke about mystery meat. It became also a type of like ultra Cuban sounding virtuosic music. But I think what I like about this song is that also it captures the irreverent nature of Cubans, how we deal with adversity. Like most people, when they have a hard time, they become melancholic and a little depressed. And I'm not making fun of that. It's just reality. You don't have energy to have humor. It's so bad that most people, if you think of, I don't know, European music, how they reacted to adversities, it's usually down. It's just sad, obviously. But I admire the fact that Cubans, they have the you get if you get lemons, make lemonade attitude. So rather than be down, they just joke about it. It's like, okay, timba, like who knows what's in this sandwich, and it becomes a source of funny, something comedic. And I like that. I think it's better for us than go down. So enjoy Pan con Timba. First the clip first, please, and then the song.
Bravo.
¡Qué rico!
¿Verdad? ¿Ya todo el mundo probó?
Oh, so much fun. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Every time I hear that piece or I play that piece, I'm transported to the scene in the movie because again, that was a brilliant choice, I thought, of pairing music and image. Is phenomenal. That transition, like our spontaneous conga in the table, to where it comes from, like the music is just an extension of that rhythm we all carry there, and this Africanness that is in everybody, regardless of color. In Cuba, we all have that sense, and even from early age, everybody's fooling around and doing rhythms at the table. I think that's kind of special. I've been hearing that for since I'm very small. Very often, even with my grandpa. Just start something and people join in, and nobody gets mad. The adults encourage, they allow that, so we kept doing it, and we pass it down to the next generation, as you could tell in the clip. So that's so much fun. So this is my last selection today. So I'll be happy to interact with whoever wants to ask me anything.
All right, Ilmar López Gavilán and his amazing brother Aldo López Gavilán. This is just so marvelous. The first thing that comes to mind is how a lot of classical music is so stodgy. And this is so much the opposite of that. It's just so alive and so vibrant. And my first question for you, and then anybody else who wants to say hello to Ilmar or ask a question. My first question is there a tour of the United States on its way, or of Cuba? What's the situation with getting work visa for Aldo right now?
I have good news. The embassy in Cuba reopened not long ago. Can you hear me and see me well? My image looks static in the screen, but I think you can hear me, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So Aldo now can go just basically a block from home and at least do the paperwork there for the work visa. So part of the movie, if you remember, he had to go to Mexico, spend all that time and money in a hotel there, not knowing whether or not he was going to get his visa because our embassy was closed there in Cuba. But now that it's reopened, at least that part of the equation is much more simple. Of course, there is still that huge inconvenience, which is most people of Aldo's artistic caliber, they get a visa for 3 years, and they can come in and out the country after you pay a very big fee, of course. And they can work for the duration of the visa. So Aldo has that visa for 3 years, but because he's Cuban, he has to apply for every individual trip. So there's like a special amendment. If you're Cuban, it's not the same. Let's say if you were a Brazilian or a Mexican that comes to the States all the time to work, that 3-year work visa is valid, but not if you're Cuban. So he still has to do the procedure for every single trip, which adds again time and resources. It adds to the expense of tour. And the short answer is no, not yet. We don't have a big tour coming up like you saw in the movie, not yet.
Includes Boston. Maybe you'll come back to the Shaolin Liu Center where you were in Rockport with the Harlem String Quartet just a couple of months back, or someplace else. It's kind of a silly thing to offer, but if you need a rehearsal space or video, a place to film. We have a beautiful piano in this room that has been admired by all the great jazz pianists here in Boston, as well as some classical pianists. Our most recent recital was Jacqueline Schwab, who does all of the background work for Ken Burns, the filmmaker, documentary filmmaker. It was a marvelous event. It's on our YouTube channel, by the way.
Nice.
But just wanted to offer you that we are at your service. This is just such an overwhelmingly magnificent presentation of all of these excerpts of you and your brother. And the sooner that it could be live with the both of you in the same room, the better that would be. And hopefully, our complaints are that the Biden administration has not reversed all the damage that Trump did yet. There seem to be just holding out, and not to ask you to make any political statement. You're an artist, and this beauty transcends politics. But unfortunately, the ugly reality of the political situation continues, and hopefully ambassadors like you and Aldo for your country could break that down. And I'm speaking platitudes, but I just want to express my just incredible inspiration by hearing the music from these two brothers.
Thank you, Dean. Yes, I completely agree that music is it's not just a universal language, but it's also a universal electric connectivity. It just connects everybody at a much more deeper level, and hopefully that connection, brings the reason, the rational side of humans to get together. But yeah, regardless of where you are in your political spectrum, there's no denying that when you see family and when you see music, it goes way beyond all of these other rational limitations we put to ourselves. And I look forward to the moment where we're back, the two countries as brothers, and my real blood brother and I can spend more time together easily.
The next question is, what about Cuba? Have you and your brother toured in Cuba?
We haven't toured in the island. We played a few times in Havana, but we actually haven't go to the provinces and so forth. That logistically is probably even harder than here because you probably know the situation is not conducive to that type of thing. I got recently some pictures from one of my favorite halls in Cuba. It's in Santiago de Cuba. It's called Sala Dolores. It's a beautiful old turn of the 1800s, or even I actually don't know when the Sala Dolores was built, but it's a beautiful relic, and it's in really terrible shape. I just got some shocking pictures of it. And so yeah, right now, we have pretty good pianos in Havana, but the rest of the provinces really are not in good shape as far as an acoustic good piano and stuff like that. Still good for, let's say, bands, jazz, or maybe if you bring a string quartet, I'm sure you have places that could accommodate that. But as far as the duo you just heard, between that and inner transportation, I don't want to bore you with that kind of things, but logistically it's not very easy.
I have a question in the chat from Jose Aleman. Ilmar, thanks for being with us again. We met the leading journalist of the series The War on Cuba, available on YouTube and produced by The Belly of the Beast. It's the name of a journalistic organization. Are you familiar with them? I am sure they will be thrilled to know your story and present it the way you want it. I feel that more people need to learn about this anachronistic dispute of the USA and Cuba through the lives of real people and less through the agendas of paid politicians. What do you think? And I'll add to that this journalist who was here is named Liz Oliva Fernandez. And if any of you, I highly recommend that you look on YouTube under The War on Cuba. You can find it. There's 6 20-minute excerpts, and they're really beautifully done by this journalist, Liz Oliva Fernandez. That's the question from Jose Aleman.
Well, I'm so glad, Jose. I don't know this journalist, but I'm looking forward to watching that. I love that type of thing. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. Definitely, and feel free to reach out to and connect us somehow, because definitely. Thank you so much, Jose.
Yeah, this was a marvelous event. Belly of the Beast is doing really very wonderful video production of on topics of both Cuba as well as other places. The most recent really marvelous clip that I saw on YouTube was Liz Oliva Fernandez interviewing the Afro-Colombian vice president of Colombia. Her name is Francia Marquez, and it's really a beautiful interview worth checking out. So lots to see there. I wonder if there's anyone else on the Zoom who would like to, Amar, take it away.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Dean. Yeah, Ilmar, thanks so much. That was such great music and very interesting clips from the movie. I'm wondering, I haven't seen the full movie aside from the clips we watched today, but I'm wondering, you mentioned going to Soviet Union and living in Moscow. Was that to study music? And how many years were you out there? What was that like living in Moscow? And was there a language barrier? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Well, I was 14, and my violin teacher actually was from Russia in Cuba. We had a lot of Eastern Europeans living in Cuba, as they had a high position of advisors and professionals that were, kind of lifting the, Cuban educational system in general. And so that's why the first African descent person to ever go to space was a Cuban cosmonaut. And if he was an American, it would have been all over the news. I think his name is Arnaldo Tamayo, but I could be mistaken. But anyways, that's just a side comment. This person, her name Ala Taran, I love her so much. She's not with us anymore, but this great teacher, she spoke to my parents and said, look, I think Ilmar needs to, if you want him to develop with the violin, he has to leave. I literally taught him everything I can. That's what she said. And back then, that was very unusual. People like my parents, for instance, they both studied in Moscow, but for college, already, more grown. But a boy, like a 14-year-old, that was strange. But, the Minister of Culture back then said, yeah, if he gets accepted, we have no problem with facilitating his leaving the island. Because back then also, if you are a minor to leave the island, you needed, we had something called the exit visa, and which it changed already a while back, but back then you needed permit to leave the country, not just to not just permit to enter somebody else's country, but to leave your own, you had to clear that. And it was not a minor thing, by the way. It was a huge thing. So the Minister of Culture had to be involved, making sure, I was able to leave. And so I left with, my mom decided to come with me that 1 year, because it would have been too tough indeed for me to be there by myself. So I'm forever grateful to my mom for sacrificing her time being with me, a school year, that's like 9 months. So yeah, my dad stayed back home with Aldito, with my little brother, and I came to Moscow, and I was actually shocked because growing up, we always look up to Soviet Union, like a developed country where you aspire to become that that good in every sense possible. And remember, I'm just a little boy, right? So when I go there, I start seeing wonderful constructions, like the Kremlin. The Kremlin is such a huge thing. This is very imposing, and especially that chapel in the Kremlin is gorgeous. I remember my dad taking me there. Like, he didn't say anything, and it's relatively close to the music school. So we're just walking, and he didn't say where we're going. And all of a sudden, I turn the corner, and I say, and he's look to the left, and I see that it's really like fairy tale. So it was beautiful, but at the same time, other things were actually terrible, probably even worse than we had it in Cuba. Like serious lack of food, and people were I don't know, they were not happy. They were, I never seen people like, in so unhappy, basically, because as I was saying with Pancontimba, we deal with adversity differently than what I saw there. And thank God for my mom, because there were like huge lines to just get food and stuff. So as a little boy, I was thinking, oh boy, if this is our example to follow, I don't know. I'm not so sure about this. So in a mundane level, I was very uncomfortable. The dorms were terrible, and the situation was bad, and the people were miserable. But then, it's hard to imagine, but the music was so phenomenal. It's like the most the most sublime sounds coming out of this conservatory, Moscow conservatory, by Bolshoi Zal in Moscow. This amazing acoustics, and it's full of pictures of this wonderful composer, Tchaikovsky, Borodin, Glazunov. Is surrounded this huge hall with the most incredible musicians, all classical, of course. And I was just so amazed. I really wanted to become good, just to try to sound like that. So it was the most kind of bipolar experience, huge juxtaposition between what my ears are hearing and what my eyes are seeing. It's phenomenally, it's really surreal in a way. But I wouldn't change it for anything. I became both the musician and the person I am today because of that very, very strong experience.
One more question from Jose.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ilmar, how are you acknowledged by Cuban cultural Cuban authorities? Do you have available some benefits in Cuba for whom you are and for what you can do to bridge, delight, and educate the people mainly of Cuba and the US?
That's a really good question. I don't have a particular official position of any kind, but I always feel welcome by the authorities, by the cultural society, I should say. It's not the authorities per se. They don't treat me with any dismay or any benefits, but everybody in my circle of friends and my family's circle of friends always welcome me to give master classes or to perform. I was always treated with respect, and anytime I have a chance to interact with students and provide guidance, I definitely do it happily. I used to also bring strings. I learned that when my strings got old, I took them out of my violin because they don't sound good enough for me. These strings are very good for a bunch of students. So I had a buddy that every time I would play with the orchestra or something, it's like, can I get your spare strings? So we became buddies, and I started collecting spare strings from my friends here, and just bringing the strings every time I went there to play. And those are the kind of things that has nothing to do with authorities or anything. It's just a fellow violinist needs strings, you bring strings. You can provide with some technical tips, you do that. You say, go to third position in this passage. Drop your shoulder. This is teaching in the most important level. And if more of us do that, not depending on anybody else, I think we'll be in a better place.
Let me add a question here. Just if you will talk a little bit about Cuban music education and the needs there. Are there enough good instruments to satisfy all the promising students that there are? And how about pianos and the repair of pianos and that sort of thing? I want to just put it in the context of this documentary I saw recently about, I don't know what has happened to it, but there's that Venezuelan thing that was called El Sistema that took just kids from the most humble barrios and taught them classical orchestra music and gave them lessons. And this is some years ago, and haven't had an update about it. It produced, what's that? The LA conductor's name?
Dudamel. Gustavo.
Thank you, Dudamel. And this documentary that I saw was just a magnificent thing that you couldn't even replicate here in the U.S. Classical music is a very elite kind of thing where you have to, be privileged already for the most part to take advanced lessons of any kind. It seems there's exceptions to that, but how is the state of music education in Cuba?
I definitely can't speak to the fact that there is always scarcities of supply. There was a moment where I feel they had enough instruments, bad quality, of course, but enough. But now I think it's more about silly things like the bow rehair, for instance. After a while here, when my bow becomes thin or it doesn't have enough grip, I just go to the shop and I have it rehair, and it costs $100, believe it or not. So you can't imagine that over there. Like, it's just not gonna happen. So things like that. When pianos go bad, there was a guy from the States, actually. I love that guy, but I forget his name. You know who I'm talking about? He wear like a piano hood or something, and he went
with pianos in Cuba. Obsessed with pianos in Cuba. Yeah. What was that guy's name? I forget.
But I don't think he keeps going. So that kind of thing. We need to create more direct ways of assisting the people we are interested in. So if you're interested in assisting pianist, then we should have a direct way to have Steinway and Son have a special patron that only deals with making sure all the Steinways in Cuba are taken care of. And they get the supplies, they get the technicians, not wait for anybody, Biden or anybody, just have one specific patron and one company open enough to do that. I know Harley Davidson, believe it or not, is doing a great job. I know they have conferences and stuff, and I saw it and I was shocked. So many like writers, they went to Cuba and just deal with the people that own Harley Davidson in Cuba and interchange piece, whatever they just wanted. I'm sure there are people that love old cars. They could do the same. So because we are in the music, I feel there is already like some Europeans that regularly send teachers and stuff like that, but it's not legally enough to really uphold the demand. A lot of people want to do better with music there, and yes, no, not enough strings and that kind of thing.
It got me thinking about all the institutions here in Boston that should be engaged in cultural exchange and giving scholarships to Cuban musicians. Berklee College of Music, New England Conservatory, Boston Conservatory, Longy School of Music. It's probably because of political reasons that there's no scholarships to Cuban kids comparable to scholarships given to kids from a lot of other places. I'm not real knowledgeable about that, but it seems like quite an absence there. And we get our piano tuned by Berklee College of Music piano tuners, and there's a discipline of where you learn piano tuning there, and there's another school that teaches that here in Boston. It's called the North Bennett Street School. There might be a possible interchange program possibility. I'm
sure people will love to just visit Cuba and donate their expertise. I'm sure there's a lot of people willing and happy to go because there's so much to learn in Cuba and the beauty of it. So if somehow there was a way of having somebody funding a trip that, let's say, is simply to give a course to how to repair pianos and bring some supplies and and go visit different schools in Cuba that needs their repair, I bet you would get 20 volunteers. It's hard to get the word out and to put together something that is workable.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. There's a question in the YouTube chat, and Amar will read it.
Okay, Ilmar, someone's asking in the YouTube chat, they're asking a couple of questions, Ilmar. How often are you able to go back to Cuba? And they'd love to hear more about your family's musical background. Were your parents musicians as well?
Yes, both my parents, let me start with the second half. Both my parents were musicians. My mom passed, but she was a phenomenal pianist and probably influenced my brother a lot. Not probably, but I know she practiced with him a lot, and she played with me very often. There is I cherish some of my videos on YouTube, so you can check them out, with my mom and I playing duet. We did a beautiful recital in a gorgeous theater in Havana. That theater is no longer, but my dad is with us still. I'm very happy. He's a conductor. He conducted many of the orchestras there, and he's definitely the father of all conductors in Cuba. Everybody that, 90% of the conductors in Cuba study with my dad, including my sister-in-law, who you saw in the video. The current conductor of the Havana National Symphony studied with my dad. And he's also a prolific composer. Very well known in the States and in the world for his choir music. He has, when he came to the States years ago, he doesn't have access to YouTube. Back then he didn't. So I went on YouTube and I typed his name, Guido López Gavilán, and all of these things start coming up. He's like, how? So yeah, I told you, you're famous. So they have choir competitions all over the world. And they just sing his pieces in China, in Israel, in Russia, in the States, everywhere, because the rhythm of his music is so complex. People use it for competition, like to show off how good their choir is. So that really gave me a lot of joy to see his childlike reaction when he saw, 40,000 views here, 50,000 views there. I'm like, wow. And sadly, he doesn't get remunerated for that. So I became kind of like his, I don't know how to call, his agent here. So when people want to play his music, my dad now learned to give my email. So I do what normal people do, is for rent or is for this is the fee. Otherwise, he's just happy that his music, he's happy and honored that his music is being played all over the world, and he doesn't realize that that's how people actually make a living. And somebody of his caliber should be remunerated. But so yeah, he's a very simple, wonderful, brilliant man. The first half of the question, if I go to Cuba, yes, I try to go as much as I can. I have no restrictions. As a Cuban American, you're allowed by both countries to travel. Just travel with 2 passports. So yeah, thank you.
Oh yes. We're coming to a conclusion here, Ilmar, and
okay.
I want you to give Aldo a big hug for us when you see him again. Hopefully that will be sooner than later. And hopefully the politics of the planet will melt so that it's not such a big barrier to be together and to do tours and hear, give us a chance to hear some of the beautiful music that we have heard today. Beautiful, soul-filled, inspirational music that we've heard. I have one little announcement that was just handed to me, and it's something that we can't do because it's at 1 p.m. in about 45 minutes, 15 minutes, because we'll be eating lunch, a beautiful lunch which Luis Guzman has prepared for us here in the auditorium for the people who are here physically. But this is a presentation of the Cambridge to Bethlehem Palestine Children's Program, Cambridge Bethlehem Sister City Project. It's a Zoom at 1 p.m. this afternoon. I'm sure there's some people interested in this program, and just look up Cambridge Bethlehem Sister City on YouTube, and you can probably find out some more information. It's this very day at 1 p.m. in 15 minutes. We are deeply involved with Palestine, and we're really happy that the Cambridge Bethlehem Sister City Project is reviving its activities and is planning a delegation to Israel, Palestine. Ilmar, we're going to go out with a little reprieve of Pan con Timba,
Okay.
And just a incredible thank you for this beautiful program that you have shared with us. I think if there are anybody here who wants to watch the entire film, I still have the link on Vimeo that I can individually share with you, not as a broadcast, but be in touch with me, dean@deanstevens.com, and I will share that Vimeo that will allow you to watch the entire beautiful documentary film about these brothers. It's called Los Hermanos, and it's just been a really marvelous thing to have you in our circle and doing this presentation for us on a Sunday morning. We wish you all a wonderful May Day tomorrow. There are May Day working labor union events in the center of town. Find out about them and be there to participate. May Day is a huge and amazing celebration in Havana as well. I was there once in the year 2001 for a May Day rally, an event that I will never forget. It was a beautiful trip. Haven't been back since. I hope to go soon and hope to take other people along. So thank you to Los Hermanos, Ilmar and Aldo López Gavilán. We're going to go out with a reprieve of that last piece that's called Pan con Timba. Thanks, everybody. And join us next week for Roger Kabler talking about Robin Williams, the comedian. And 2 weeks from now, Randy Credico. We have 2 beautiful physical events here in the auditorium. Come show your face. Come enjoy lunch afterwards. And thank you for being with us at Community Church of Boston. We'll see you soon. Bye. Hasta luego. Ciao.
Thank you, Dean.